My name is Claire Anderson, and I had just turned 46 when this story began. Living in a quiet suburban neighborhood outside of Chicago, I thought I had my life figured out. I had been divorced for nearly 5 years, raising my teenage daughter Emily, and focusing most of my energy on my work as a marketing consultant. Life was steady, predictable, and in many ways, a little too quiet. I had long since accepted that romance belonged in the past. My ex-husband and I had split because he thought I was no longer fun enough, and his words about me being too old, too tired, and too serious had carved wounds that never fully healed. So I built walls, convinced myself that love wasn't necessary, and poured my heart into work and motherhood. But everything changed when Ethan walked into my life. He was 28, almost 2 decades younger than me, tall with sandy blonde hair and a smile that had an easy charm. He had just moved into the neighborhood, renting the house next door with a couple of friends. The first time I saw him, he was unloading boxes from a pickup truck, his t-shirt clinging to his back in the late summer heat. Emily noticed him before I did, laughing as she pointed out how our new neighbor looked like he belonged on the cover of a fitness magazine. I told her not to be silly, but inside, I found myself staring a little longer than I should have. Over the next few weeks, Ethan and I became casual acquaintances. He waved every morning when I left for work and occasionally stopped by to ask about trash collection days or local grocery stores. He was polite, friendly, and full of youthful energy. One Saturday afternoon, he knocked on my door asking if I had a wrench he could borrow. I invited him inside, and as I handed him the tool, he laughed, saying, "You're a lifesaver, Claire. I'd be helpless without neighbors like you." There was a warmth in his voice, the kind that made me feel seen after years of invisibility. But one evening, his words sliced me in a way I didn't expect. A few of his friends had come over for a backyard barbecue, and I joined briefly when they invited me. We sat around with drinks, sharing stories, and one of Ethan's friends teased him about flirting with me. Ethan laughed it off and said, "Come on, she's way too old for me." My heart sank. I smiled politely, pretending it didn't matter. But when I went home later that night, the sting of those words lingered. They reminded me of everything my ex had once said, of every insecurity I tried to bury. For the next few days, I avoided Ethan. I busied myself with work, ignored his waves, and gave short answers when he tried to strike up conversation. But he noticed. One evening, he showed up at my door, his face serious. "Did I do something wrong?" he asked. I shook my head, insisting I was just busy, but he pressed. Finally, I admitted I had overheard his comment. His expression softened instantly, regret flashing in his eyes. "Claire, I didn't mean it like that," he said. "It was stupid. I was just trying to deflect my friend's teasing. The truth is, I think you're amazing. You're beautiful. I'm sorry. I didn't know how to respond." No one had called me beautiful in years, not with that kind of sincerity. I brushed it off, saying he didn't need to flatter me, but he wouldn't let it go. He started finding reasons to spend time with me, helping fix a loose fence panel in my yard, carrying groceries for my car, or dropping by with coffee, just because he said I looked like I could use a break. Slowly, the wall I had built began to crack. One rainy evening, Emily was at a sleepover, and I was curled up on the couch with a glass of wine and an old movie. A knock at the door startled me. It was Ethan, standing there drenched, his hoodie soaked through. He had locked himself out of his house. I laughed, letting him inside, and handed him a towel. He sat with me while waiting for his roommate to return with a spare key. We talked for hours about everything from our favorite books to our biggest regrets. He listened intently when I spoke about my fears of growing older, about how I sometimes felt invisible in a world that worshipped youth. He surprised me by saying, "You don't seem old to me at all. Honestly, Claire, you make most people my age look boring." That night, something shifted between us. His hand brushed mine as we laughed over a story, and neither of us pulled away. There was a pause, a silence filled with something electric, before he finally whispered, "I can't stop thinking about you." My heart pounded, torn between fear and desire. I reminded him again of our age difference, of how he had once said I was too old. But he shook his head firmly. "I was wrong. You're not too old, Claire. You're everything I didn't know I was looking for." From that night onward, our connection deepened. We started spending time together in ways that went beyond neighborly gestures. Morning jogs turned into long conversations. Cooking dinner together turned into laughter-filled evenings where he made me feel alive again. He didn't see my wrinkles as flaws, but as proof of the life I had lived. He didn't make me feel like I had to compete with younger women. He made me feel like I was exactly enough. Of course, it wasn't easy. People whispered. Emily was confused at first, struggling to understand why her mother was spending so much time with someone closer to her age than mine. Some neighbors gave judgmental looks, and even my own sister questioned me, saying, "Claire, he's going to get bored. You're setting yourself up for heartbreak." Their doubts echoed the ones already inside me. But Ethan never wavered. He held my hand in public, looked at me like I was the only woman in the room, and made it clear he wasn't ashamed of us. The night everything crystallized, we were sitting on my porch watching the sunset. I told him that I was terrified of falling too deeply, that one day he might wake up and realize he wanted someone younger, someone who could give him things I no longer could. He turned to me, his eyes steady, and said, "Claire, stop waiting for me to leave. I'm here because I want you. You're not a placeholder. You're not a second choice. You're the woman I can't stop thinking about. The woman I don't want to let go of." In that moment, I believed him. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to lean into the possibility of love again. He had once said I was too old, but now he couldn't seem to get enough of me. And maybe that was the greatest lesson of all, that love doesn't check birth certificates, it doesn't follow timelines, and it doesn't fade just because the years pass. Sometimes it arrives unexpectedly, breaking every rule you thought was unbreakable, reminding you that you're still alive, still desirable, and still capable of being someone's everything. Ethan didn't just make me feel younger, he made me feel like myself again. And as I looked into his eyes that evening, I realized I didn't care what anyone else thought. I wasn't too old. I was exactly the right age for the love I had found.